Well, here we are. Hello, everyone, and welcome to FL Studio. You're now looking at the project file for Reconnect featuring QORA 136 BPM A minor. Out now everywhere. It was such a blast to work on this, and the origin story for the song, as I mentioned at the beginning of the stream, is actually pretty exciting. So I think I'm going to start with that. There are some details that I need to keep kind of close to my chest, but I'll try to give you guys an overall picture nonetheless. So, around the end of summer last year, I got an email from the guys over at Involved Publishing. They're a publishing agency most notable for working with labels like Anjuna Beats and Ophelia, which I've already worked with, hence the connection. They reached out and they were like, "We think you would be a great fit for this." And they sent me a prompt for quote unquote contemporary epic beats. So they asked me to make a vocal track for them that followed a certain set of guidelines, and they offered to support it under their Sync Music initiative. Now, if you're in the scene, you might have already heard the term sync music, but in very simple terms, sync is when your music is licensed for use in an audiovisual project. So say I'm a producer for a TV advert, or a showrunner for a Netflix series, or a short film, or a feature film, and I want to use your song for a certain scene in an episode, I need to go to your agency and I need to acquire a license to your song so I can use it in that scene. It's a lot like licensing your music for a video game. The concept is pretty similar. I read through the prompt and they had a certain structure and some key things that I had to do, but the guidelines were flexible enough that I could still have a level of freedom that I was comfortable with. I could follow their guidelines and still have fun with it, still have it sound like me, like retain the essence of modus, right? So I read the themes that they were going for, and I decided to go for a dark spy thriller vibe, internal conflicts, yin versus yang, and I had already been meaning to make something like that for a while. So this just seemed like my call to action. And I just couldn't say no. I was so down. I stopped everything I was doing, which at the time was the Nina Prokol 9 short film, so nothing to sneeze at, and went to town on it pretty much right away as they were looking to get everything wrapped up or at least materialized by the following month. So it was a tight deadline, but still within the realm of reason. And this is how we arrive at the first of 4 parts I want to divide this breakdown into. The composition, the production, the vocals, and the mix and master. So the stock composition. This song is about a character that is facing his inner demons and is walking the fine line between sanity and madness. And yes, the vocals will eventually talk about that. But at this point, we don't have a vocalist yet, we don't have lyrics yet, so whatever those end up becoming, the music itself has to align with that too. So I need to define what is sanity and what is madness in music form. So I took to my piano and tried to find the simplest possible way to define that, and I landed not on a melody, like not even notes, just motions, like directions, rising up, hope, and descending down into madness. So, like, cool. Now I have to to put that into notes somehow. And that's when I found this set of chords. Okay, so not only did those chords follow a constant downward motion, but they looped seamlessly and endlessly, so kind of like a shepherd tone, but for chords. So if I were to run these down the piano, you can just keep going. Right? But then I realized this is a downward motion. So what if I reverse it and I got the opposite? Can't play, but I can't play a piano for God's sake. And then you have the upward motion. So I have sanity, so like going up, and madness going down, right? Now I need to find the line between them. And that's when I thought, okay, let's take the last 3 chords, okay? And let's come up with a different point of entry. So I figured instead of the tonic, right, let's enter with the dominant. Right? And so I stumble upon that, and that's it. The rest of the song is just combining those 3 sets of chords in different orders and then layering a melody on top. So let's go through the project and see what we can find. So as you can see, we go to this low brass, which is where the bass is. There it is. Na, na. So we lead with that dominant, that 5, and then we go to 6, and then 4, and then a flat 2. So we go dominant, superdominant, subdominant, and flat supertonic, which you will see me do a lot. It like sounds very Spanish. It's just ingrained. So you'll see these last 3 chords, and normally it would start here. Na, 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 na. But yeah, just on the intro, like we're starting like kind of in the balance, and then we start to deviate from that balance. And then we duplicate this voice. We have some strings there with an automation that will come in later. We're not playing that automation yet, so we don't need to worry about this. So see how now we're finally starting to see that? That downward motion, right? And then we have the reverse. We have that upward motion. It's just that I transposed the last 2 chords down just for like a deeper bass, just like for like wow factor. But in reality, what this is an upward motion, right? We have that low brass, and then we have the drone. And this melody actually has a constant motion going up, but at some point it gets stuck on the same note, or like very close to that, right? So it's kind of like you're rising up, but you're kind of having some trouble doing that, right? And while doing that, I had to make sure that the notes, the melody that I was playing on top of the bass was consonant with that bass. So what I did was, these are just major thirds. So if I just play the piano here, we just have that major chord, right? And then we have that. And then we have a 5th. And then we have that, probably the most dissonant part of this melody is that 9th. So that's a 9th with that B flat, which is kind of appropriate because we are on the lowest point. We are on the lowest note of all of the progressions. That this B flat is the lowest note that we will ever hit in the song. So it's kind of appropriate that the lowest point is also the most dissonant. And we finally kind of start to see some hope in there. We go like really, really high, right? And that's when the vocals are supposed to start. So that's when I stopped playing that drone, and we're just left with the instrumental. And as you can see, I wrote the lyrics here on these markers so I could write it all down for reference for Evelyn to sing. We just keep going down. Start to add in some more elements. We will get to the sound design and like all the layering on the second part. Like we will do another pass of the song. Now we'll just complement the same like downward motion. We descend down into madness, but now we have a few more complements. And look at that CPU usage. Please save FL Studio. Thank you. This is actually kind of interesting because we have like all these layers, right? And then they culminate in this like very quiet, very minimal pre-drop. And there's actually two versions of this pre-drop. That's version 1, and this is version 2. It's the exact same chords, but here we have a choir, and here we have a piano. And these two pre-drops are kind of like the yin and yang version of like each other, right? So they're the same, but like they're like twins, right? And these twins, the first one will always play first, and then the piano one will always play second. And this actually repeats on the second drop, on the climax here, when like the drop finally goes big, you know, the high point of the song. And we have this first version of the pre-drop to bridge into second section, to the second half of the drop. We have that. And then we end the drop with that too. So this version always comes in first, and this version always comes in second. So we just have that same theme going through the drop, just like in drop fashion, like full intensity. We have that melody, and we start to see how the melody starts to diverge from the bass. So the melody goes up and the bass goes down. And here it's actually the opposite. Both of them are going up, except that here in the bass I have once again transposed the last two notes down for like that just deep bass, like for like wow factor. Second hits harder for some reason. That's kind of the idea. It's like the first pre-drop is a setup for the second one, right? So the first one is introductory, the second one is conclusive. But it's just like really interesting how you can have the same set of like the exact same interactions. It's the same notes, it's the same chords, just the differences in how you play them out and like the instruments that you use. It can change so much. And that's kind of what I wanted to try out here. Again, that like neutral version and then going up. So if you were to take out the average of this drop, it's like it goes neutral, up, right? So this drop is mostly hopeful, and so is the second one. This like follows pretty much the same trend, like neutral, up, right? So this the drops feel hopeful, and then in the breakdown we have the exact opposite. So it all kind of averages out in the end. We have an equal mix of the drops have an upward motion on average, and the off drops have a downward motion on average. And you're seeing the progression here. Dun, 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 da. And it goes down. And it goes down again. And it goes down again. So the breakdowns and the non-drops average down, the drops average up. Got some chops there. So again, on this second build-up, we just have that downward motion. We descend down into madness, and again. And now, this is actually like the only part of the song where like really deviates and it has like its own thing. So here, for the second build-up, the part that leads us to the climax, to the second drop, we start on the dominant, and you expect, okay, this starts with the dominant. He's gonna do the neutral motion again, na 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 na, but that doesn't happen. Instead, there's a chromatic movement down, so it's kind of like you're not really going down into insanity as much as you're like teetering on the line and just about like deviating, right? So it's kind of like it goes all the way down. There's a chromatic movement all the way down from the dominant to the tonic. Na, 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 na. Right? And then in the middle of all that, I really wanted to do a part where the orchestra shines through, not just the vocalist. So I went all out here and I pulled out this really melodic, this really cool string motif. This was actually meant to be used here. The intention was to use that there, but we had vocals there, so I couldn't really do that because we would have two melody lines like running into each other, right? So this was basically the only part where I could do it, and I had to be really careful of what I did in the chords because this melody has to be consonant with this chromatic movement, which is extremely challenging. So I had to make sure that every note I hit in this melody still was part of the scale of the chord that I was currently in. So in this part, we go from the dominant. E, we go into E flat. In fact, the piano has it all, so we can do that. This is probably the most dissonant one. That's a tritone, basically. But since we are basically resolving this into a D, into a subdominant with a seventh, since we are resolving from the tritone to this, it's not as jarring, so it doesn't feel as jarring. If I just left this chord hanging here, it would have probably not worked. So this was the only reason this worked in the first place. And so we had the seventh here, and then just a minor third for this D. And then we have this C sharp. This is just the first inversion of A all the way through, because the A chord, the chord, the triad of A minor, right? And then we go, if we go for a Picardy third, we would switch that minor third for a major third, right? That, right? And so we have this, and the first inversion of that chord is just the same triad, but the third is now the bass, right? And this already has both of those notes. Na, na. So we can just use that. So we're basically going from the first inversion of A major to the first inversion of A minor. This also kind of blows my own mind as well at times. It's just it's hard to think through sometimes. So we have this, and then we have this. They both have the same bass in their fundamental state, but not in their first inversion. Right? And that's kind of what I took advantage of here. And there it is. Get right by the top. It basically has the same series of chords as the first drop. Neutral and up. So the second drop also averages up. Averages positive. And we just finally go up with that. We've been holding it. We've been holding on to it. We haven't really gone up that much, and then we finally go for it. You know? What's Keanu Reeves? We'll get to it. We'll get to it. Lay down. And it's just an instrumental part for the vocals to shine through. I had to make sure that there weren't too many voices up top because the vocal will be sitting there. And then again, a piano version of the pre-drop, and this would be a way to end the song with vocals. So how can you go to heaven when you haven't been through hell? And the reverb just got in the way. That's just beautiful. How can you go to heaven when you haven't been through hell? And that's how the song ends, right? Just really cool stuff. So that's the composition. Now let's get into the technical bit. We have some drum cells. I believe these are from Ultranova? Hypernova, okay. So again, we're working with a tight deadline. We gotta work smarter, not harder. If we have samples of our own, let's use them. And let's have a look at this. Have a look at this bass. So you were wondering what Keanu Reeves is. This is basically a preset that I made a while back. It's just two saws, and they're detuned ever so slightly in different ways. So one has two voices, and the other one has three. So you get this like weird phasing thing, right? In between them. And then what I did was just low pass it in post. I'm pretty sure I must have done a filter here. There it is. There's the filter. So without any effects, it sounds a little something like this. Which, to be honest, it's pretty fire. That's sick. Yeah, that is nasty indeed. So what I did was, first of all, this EQ to get a bit of the lows out and a bit more brightness. That won't matter because we're going to low pass it anyway, but there are some bits where the filter goes out, mostly in the climax. So we have that, right? Not too significant, but then we have an OTT. And there it is. And now we just have the filter that that accounts for most of the filtering it out. There it is. But we still have a bunch more things. We have a Lux verb here. That's like super subtle. It just adds like the teeniest bit. See there? It sounds kind of like a plate reverb of sorts. Right? And then we head on over to Tora verb. Because of course there is Tora verb. And that has the like longer reverb. So since this is an intro, we don't really need the sub to be like really stable, like in phase, like adjusted. Like we can allow this bass to like really have this nasty movement, like back and forth phasing down there. That'll make it sound really evil. You know? And then we have another reverb to basically like chorus it up even more. We basically turn it from a dry sound into a more distant one. See that? So we basically distanced the space a little bit so we can allow the top lead to come out in front a little more. And now we distort this a tiny bit. We just add a bit of dirt, right? And then we do an all pass phase. As you can see, it adds a bit more like phasery, like bubbly nature in that low end. And then we do one final EQ, boost the fundamentals, the like sub frequencies, and to clean up that mid end to make it sound like less boomy and just more sub heavy. See that? That's the difference. And now we get to talk about the that top lead, that like really distorted, just nasty, almost brass-like top lead. There's actually two layers to this. The first of these layers is vital. So this is just a dispersed saw with a bit of unison, like 5%, just the tiniest bit. And we have also the tiniest possible bit of white noise, and it's bandpassed here with the filter so we can see. And the first oscillator, yeah, it's being filtered. And there's an automation in the project, like down in automation land, that's working this. See that? And there we have that bandpass noise. We have a tiny bit of distortion. So if I were to turn off all of the effects change that I have here, because like the mixer is also chock full. That's basically the source sound, like just raw dry. As you can see, it's basically just a distorted saw, right? And if we take this out, it's just a super saw. It's been dispersed a tiny bit, and it has a bit of LFO. It has that like vibrato effect, right? So we got that. And then we enable the compression to like saturate it a tiny bit. And that's the raw sound. And then we have a bunch of effects. We have a to reverb, which just adds. So this is basically like a fancy detuner in a way. You just use like a 0.4 second long to reverb, super short, and that just like, it's kind of like blurring out the sound, you know? You're kind of like doing a Gaussian blur on a sound. Then we have an LFO tool for another vibrato. So we're doing two vibratos. And this one's like super subtle. It has like 20%. So there's like two vibratos working in tandem at like different ratios. So we get a slightly fluttery effect on each. And then we have another destructor that's distorting it even further. And then we have an EQ to high pass. And get rid of all those rubbish frequencies. Sorry, I missed how you're getting that tremolo effect. Oh yeah, it's just an LFO. Just a very short 1/64th LFO. And then we have an OTT. We're getting there. Another EQ to clean up some frequencies. A Pro R to blur it out even more. As you can see, it's also very short. And it's not full mix. That's not full wet. And we have another one that's slightly longer and also not full wet. So we add a tiny bit more room there. So this would be like a plate, and this would be a room. So you can see, and then we have a delay. It's like very subtle because the feedback is turned very low. So you can hear like no, but it's just like very subtle. And then finally we have a soothe. Basically soften this range of the spectrum. But we're not done because we have another change. So I linked this track into another track so I could keep going. And I did more stuff to this. I did a general air boost. Next, I brought out hyperchorus. The tiniest bit of mix. It's like it's almost not even noticeable. It blurs it out the tiniest bit, and I'm pretty sure this is being automated at some point to further detune it, but it's not here in the intro. And then we have a glue compressor to basically like to crush the sound even further. And then we have another flurry effect, because by this point we have blurred the sound out so much that we have lost some of that tremolo effect. Like vibrato effect. So now you basically have to do it again, and I don't know why the why the GUI is frozen, but the plugin is turned on, so I don't mind. Then we have a crystallizer. Right now it's off, but it will turn itself on, I believe, at the end of the first drop, or there are some points where it'll turn on. There's an automation here somewhere in automation land that takes, this is it, the crystallizer. It just kind of adds a higher octave overtone. There it is. And then we finally have these two things. This is called intro modifier. And basically what this is a series, this is a chain that only comes into play on the intro. This basically, this is to like shape the sound to make it intro-like, to like make it have like less intensity, right? Or to like, to tone it down so it can be played like, so it sounds deeper, not as open, right? There it is. Without it, sounds a lot more open. This is just a very gentle low pass, a Saturn, and auto pan to like pan things around, right? Because we want it to be like really like all encompassing. And since we're not playing any vocals on top for the first few bars of it, we want this to like really pan around you so you can really feel that lead. And a Luxverb and a Turbo. So yeah, those two reverbs in tandem just work beautifully. And then finally we have a fruity balance. There's also another layer to this. This one is super subtle, and I believe it works here. See that? So this is just kind of like dirt. Like an add-on that's just dirt. So what this has a distortion module with a bunch of asymmetry in it. So this basically only comes into play at certain moments, right? See that? So it's kind of like the overtone for the actual like bass. So with the two together, so we get that extra bit of vibrato in there, like just dirt and grit and noise. See that? That's this. So I'm using it both to complement the melody and the bass. Pretty Blade Runner-esque, if you ask me. It just sounds very like cyberpunky, honestly. And there it is. Keep it going. We have some more drones. And then we have a piano. This is labs. Yes, I'm starting to use labs in conjunction with addictive keys. That doesn't mean I'm moving over, but it's addictive keys. I'm still addicted to it, no pun intended. Or maybe, yeah, maybe pun very much intended. We just have the chords going like dun, 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 in octaves, right? And we have some add-on notes on top. And then an octave further. So like slowly opens up. And this is another flex preset called Dark Resonance. And let me find it. It's right here. It's part of Arksoon Cityscape. And we have that. We have that, and then we have this other thing, which is a lot more on the nose, right? But this one is muted here, and it will come into play later. So that one's like a lot more obvious. And there we go. And now we have some tubular bells. Very, very quiet. There it is. Just helps make it sound really dark. So I made them kind of like a background effect when I didn't want them to stand out, and when I did, I bumped up the velocity a lot more. So when I really wanted the bell to stand out, that's when I bumped up the velocity, and then here, I still wanted it, but like just in the background. And there you're seeing that synth come through. Na 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 na. Cool. And now we have some samples. This is just a drone. Some sea waves, which is actually appropriate for the cover art because it features a like lake or like a sea or an ocean of sorts. There is some sea waves, and then we have some sci-fi drones as well. Very subtle. And this is a gong scrape. I'm pretty sure I used this exact sample on NYP9 on a couple occasions. And then there's some shaken sleigh bells. If I were to really boost them, they would sound like this. So they're just like super subtle. Like super quiet. And then we have everything. That vocals come there. We have a shaker here. Very, very cool. We have a solo violin here. Let's have a look. See if we can find that solo violin. Solo violin. It's somewhere in here. I found it. It's on the other pattern. There it is. And I did automate the velocity on this, so it will like have a realistic movement of the arc. This is all things I learned during NYP9, and after I made NYP9, I was ready to take on this with a lot more like knowledge. After having learned stuff about how violins work. So now I was a little bit more prepared to take on things like that, making violins sound realistic. And not only that, we have a ton more stuff going on in the drums. So we have a clock ticking. These actually have a kilohertz ensemble to detune them a tiny bit. The raw sample sounds like this. So I synced it up to the tempo and I did this. And there it is. And I turned it down minus 21 dB because it just had to be the quietest thing. And then we have some crowd sounds, which complement the sea waves. So you don't really hear the crowd in this one that much. And you hear the noise down lifter and the sub rumble. It's all about the little details. It's all the subtle things. When you're making a very mellow, dark intro, it's all about the little things. See the clock there in the very, very far background, you know. That's what drives the rhythm. And we have the drums finally come through. This is just damage 2. It's just contact. And what I did was I have 2 instances of contact. It wants to open. There's a library here, I swear. Oh, there it is. It just came up. There it is. So I did two versions. I did one with a closed mic setup and one with a far mic setup. So all I have to do to change that on this library, which is what I like about it so much, is this. We just have to drag this, and as you can see, the mics change, or like the arrangement, the position of the drums change, which is something I really, really like about this. So we have a very far away, like almost reverb only setup, and then a very close, very intimate version. See that? So we're using the close one for the subtle things, the dark mellow intro. And then when we finally get the huge trailer hits in, you know, that's when we start to use the far mic setup. It sounds like it's very far away. It sounds very large and mystical. And the trailer hits have this same reverb. There's a Lux verb here, it's a Tora verb, and there's an east-west spaces with some taiko preset. And there it is. And what happens during this breakdown is that there's a volume automation here that's going to switch. It's going to mute the far setup, and it's going to fade the close one in. So I'm playing the exact same thing on the drums on both the close and far configuration, and I'm automating between the two. So I switch out the far, and I get the closer one in to kind of like reel you in towards the drop, right? And there you go. And these are just two trailer hit samples. We have big hits. I believe this is from Kaiser X. Yeah, Kaiser X Hybrid Cyberpunk Trailer Toolkit. This is just the trailer, the trailer drum. Watch any movie trailer; it has this sample in it, like this exact sample. And then there's another layer which is called Crowd Pleaser. And that's basically what that is. And the cool thing about this one is that it has the roll at the beginning here, that, you know, that thing. So yeah. And just with that massive amount of reverb, you know, at this super, super large feeling. And even on top of that, I had to layer some amount of kick in there for like that additional sub impact. So we have that thump, that, and then, you know, and then again. Because without it, we do have the hits and the attack from those hits, but we don't really have that much of a low-end thump. See that? That changes so much. And that's when we finally start to introduce the kick that's eventually going to be used in the drop. And we have our kick roll. And the kicks and snares that I use for this drop, well, are, I believe, from either Hypernova or Ultranova. I think this one's Ultranova, yeah. So this is that. So this sounds like a very distant kick, like very reverbed. It almost sounds like We Will Rock You, like, or like. Yeah, it almost kind of sounds like that. And then we have another reverbed clap with its like basically faded out, like with a fade out baked into the sample. It sounds reverbed, but it doesn't have a very long tail. And then we just have some rides and some hats. It's very, very basic. And then when we need some more percussion, we just throw in a Foley filler. I believe the first time I used the sample was with my Dragonfly remix for AU5. And then we have some more layers with damage. And then we have a studio drummer. Basically for like the rim shot / clap. We do have a clap. Come on, you can do this. Studio drummer is notable for doing that. There it is, now it's loaded. Cool and good. And we have that clock as well and that Foley filler. And then we have the kick. And some corn sound Foley crackle to complement the kick. The rim shot snare, sorry. And so finally, we have that other rim shot, which I believe is bounced from another ID of mine. I believe it's codename Jimmy John. Those of you who have been here recently or last year will know that we codename for the YouTube folks out there, because this is going to be re-uploaded to YouTube. We codename the tracks that I work on stream, right? And we tend to give them pretty weird code names. We have codename David. We had codename Jimmy John. We have codename Simon, Ralph. And we have codename Pablo. We have all sorts of weird names. That's just to hide the actual track name that I'll be using for the final song. But yeah, it just gives people an opportunity to participate by giving the song a funny code name and just referring to the song as that instead of the actual track name. So don't want to reveal until it releases naturally. Obviously, no modus track is complete without some AU5 crashes. Some timpani rolls that I bounced from NYP9, I'm pretty sure. And then we have some timpanis here. Some tuned timpanis. And the timpani hits also follow that same movement down. And then we finally have the climax. Snare 3, legendary. So yeah, this is basically just where I go like all out. And I just have like huge crowds, lots of hats. I have an MPC. Not an MPC, an FPC, which is just a hats programmer, a hat sequencer built into FL Studio. This is a preset that I've had for years. That's basically all the hi-hats from Xylan's Power Pack 1 in just one FPC preset. And it's just the easiest thing. It works so well. And there it is. FPC is so good. Okay, let's move away from the drums and focus on the good stuff, okay? Now we get even more layers. The Keanu Reeves gets a higher octave. And the flex also gets that complementary, like just dirt, you know? So we have 2 octaves of this Keanu Reeves. See that? That's what makes it so full and rich. The fact that we have multiple octaves working together. And then we have this. Right, so what I have is a Dune 3 preset, which is just a plucked bass line. And I'm pretty sure the original preset came with an arpeggio-like melody. So I had to flatten that so it would always play the same note. So I basically got rid of like the arpeggiated melody that it was playing. And so I made it just play A. as you can see there. That made for a really cool plucked bass line. If this song was made just a few months after, I would have been able to use Kepler, the like new FL Studio tool, which is pretty much just as good for basses. It's like really good, and it's built into FL Studio, so it's just like win-win, massive W. What is that, Kepler? Just find out. So we have that plucked bass, and then we have two instances of Dune ARPs. One of them is a harmonics layer, I'm pretty sure. That's not the harmonics layer. This one is. So this one's like a very high octave layer. It just plays the highest overtones, like the highest top end. You can see it's very high pass. And then we have the actual like core, the heart of the ARP, which is playing 2 octaves. And there we go. So if I unsolo everything. And then on top of that, we have a spiccato strings. Well, this is 2 octaves, so it's safe to assume it's a violin and a viola. And there we go. That's the whole thing. And if you layer this with the bass, rich. But we're not done yet. Because we gotta get the rest of the orchestra in. So there's a Metropolis Arc 1 Cimbazi, which is basically like the even lower version of a trombone, if I'm not mistaken. If I solo the Cimbazi. We have another string lead. And then we have another one that comes later. And we have the woodwinds, which just 2 chords. Then we have a monster brass. Dong, dong, dong. They're so quiet. There it is. And then we have the low strings. So when you combine the low strings with the monster brass, with the woodwinds, with the strings, with the Cimbazi, you get the whole shebang. We have that like violin phrase going on. And then here we have some more layers. We have the bells that we already saw. And this is actually a sample, I believe, from Death Stranding. That's why it says DS here. I sampled this from a part of the video game where you fight this like giant boss. In the game, it's called a BT, a beached thing. They're basically like the black like tar things, like bosses that you fight in the game. And for some reason, that boss, it screams, like when it screams, it lets out this like incredible like tonal rhesus. I was just like, I need to sample this. Like that's actually a boss screaming from a video game. Like there's just no way. And then there's this brass band that I believe I bounced. I bounced a brass band from another library, and I just stood there. And we have some more of the like gong scrapes and the sea waves and the drones, and we have some uplifters now, like build up the tension, and the bells. Na, na. We have 2 risers. And we have some bounced sounds from the drop. So basically what I did here is I bounced this entire bit of the drop. So it sounds like this. And I sometimes reversed it. Oh. Ooh, that's just dark. That's just nasty. So I just used the sounds from the drop to tease the drop during the build-up, which you'll find a common occurrence for my songs. I tend to tease the drop in the build-ups. And then we have a glass shard, which I'm pretty sure is a version of this. Oh, I remember what this is. Hey, Skybreak, you wanted to know what this is? I remember now. It's just a ride ran through a spectral gate. So you take just a ride. So you take a ride like that or that, and you spectral gate it, right? Here it is. I didn't get rid of the plugin. Okay, so you spectral gate it, and it sounds like this. See that? And then you reverb the hell out of it. And you start to get a little closer to that, right? And so that's just, after fiddling with it quite a bit, I got that. Yeah, it's pretty sick. And I'm pretty sure I layered this with like some sort of other like sine wave or piano to get that A. Otherwise, I'm not sure how I got that tone in there, but yeah, that's mostly it. It's a spectral gated ride. Spectral gated ride for bells. Pretty cool. It's just a D-pad. I didn't even use a sine wave for this. I just used a detuned Reese as my sub bass because it just sounded wider, it sounded larger, it sounded more cinematic, and I would have all the time in the world to control the dynamics of it in the mix and master later with like the ozone dynamics. So I didn't really care. I was just like, to hell with it. Let's just make nasty sub bass. And I combined it with this like very blurred swells. And it's just so cool. I made for such a beefy bass. And then when you combine this with the main growl, so this is basically the same thing as the intro, but like full intensity, like finally open, right? We have and if we turn off the melody, we'll see what the bass is all about. So let's turn that off and then focus on just the bass. The main bass is a combination of Vital and I think 3x oscillator. So the first of them, just a saw wave. And what I did is here in the sequencer, I set an envelope for the modulator X, which basically amounts to a low pass, as you can see here. So I'm basically automating this. It's not showing up because it's an ADSR envelope, not an automation clip. So it doesn't show up here like as it like moves live, but it's definitely there. As you can see, it plays, and then this DK turns down the envelope. I wish it showed. Yep, me too. But yeah, can't have it. Can't have it always. The devs are probably very busy at work, giving us some game-breaking new feature, like unlimited mixer tracks, please. FL22, please. All right, let's keep it going. So we have that. It's just a saw wave. And then I ran that saw wave through an OTT, a frequency splitter where I did a ProWire to like only the highs and not the lows. So I could blur out the high end, but retaining the cleanness of the low end. And then I distorted it even further. And then there's a toe reverb, and then there's a parametric EQ, and then there's a filter that basically filters the whole thing out. I believe it's at the end of the drop where this comes into effect. And the other layer to this is this. So what is this? Interesting, right? This is just a saw wave that has the tiniest bit of smear and sync. You can see that. But you can kind of see how this is just a saw wave. And let's turn off these three effects. You can see it's just a saw wave. And we have a compressor, a distortion module, and a filter, which does the whole like meow, the whole filtering, like low passing thing at the output. We have that, and then the second layer is a phase dispersed saw again. It's all about saws, and that just has that really detuned layer of everything. And when you compress this with this, it's not as loud. As you can see, it's like barely there. If you turn it down, it becomes more noticeable, as you can see. But we don't want that much. Just want the teeniest bit. And then we have this. Whoa. the deep house whomp. It's just a sine wave with detune. And then with the filter at the end. That's literally all it is. And then that's the end of the sound. So we have that. And a saw wave. It's all saw waves. It's all saw waves. I did like this is just saws. And then if you layer this with the smeared swells and the sub, you get the main sound. And there it is. And then if we re-enable the top lead, get that. Got some zaps for fillers. I believe these are from AU5, the Alien Weapon Pack. Pretty sure. Then we have some piano. Basically to complement, this is additive keys, a square arp. We do get a brass in here. We do get a French horn in here. After a while. Then we finally switch back from the addictive keys into the labs. We have some more of those drones from the intro, but now it's like with a percussive pattern. So this is basically the same as the intro, but with more rhythm. So I get that studio drummer in there, and we have a Scarlet Arp for a bass. This is the Scarlet Arp. You find it. It says as much. I completely forgot about this. It's everywhere and it's nowhere. I completely forgot I did that. Why did I do that? Anyway. And that's just a very dry, very close spiccato viola. We have some more layers. We You have the swell, a bass from Bejeweled Twist. It just sounds amazing. Look at that. That's from Codename David, by the way. That's from that, like, we sampled that from Codename David. There's no way that's what the Scarlet Arp looks. It's literally just filtered saws. It's a saw with some sync on it, and it has a filter. That's all there is, literally. It's just, there's no more to it. And a bounced bass brass that I reversed for that effect. And there it is. And we have that piano. Dun, 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 dun. Whoa, that gong scrape. Nah, it really isn't. Okay. Trying to show, huh? There's so much going on. All right, we have some tremolo strings on top of. This is a lead strings preset that's basically just going to follow exactly what the vocals are doing. This is just a layer to what eventually will be the vocals in there. And there's the cine strings and the tremolo strings, which are in here. And I had to control this, the velocity of the strings very carefully, because this is basically what makes them sound realistic. Otherwise, if this was like that, they would just sound like MIDI. And then we have choirs, both male and female. Actually, we don't. It's just male. Okay. It's just that the boys go really high. I thought these were contraltos, actually, but they're not. And there we go. And then we have some woodwinds again. And flutes trying to come in. And then if you put them all together, then we have the low strings in here, that bass. Oh, not done yet because we have the brass. Just massive chords. Do you have a lead there? No, no, minor second. Ah, that's just great. Awesome. And then when you layer everything together with that lead string, if you just listened to the cinematic part on this, you probably just geek out. It sounds so good. Low strings, the bells, the tremolo strings doing na, na. And just the tapestry of sounds that generates is so cool. And then when you get the synths in, it sounds even bigger. And I basically did the exact same build-up as the first. It's just that now there's more stuff on top. So, yeah. But for the drums, it's the exact same thing. And there's actually a growl preset here. It's the Growlzilla plug from AU5, and it just has the greatest, like, very moving FM growls. Yeah, wow. Like, for those bits where it's going down in chromatics. And it gets, like, really, really deep. Has that sick movement. Right? Cool, cool. And we have some atonal cellos. And this. This is some... Oh, I know what this is. This is... I also sampled this from a video game. This is in Monster Hunter World. There's a dragon called Safi Jiva, right? And there's a phase where, like, it throws a lightning, like a ball of lightning to the ground and, like, flashes the entire screen. And, like, when that happens, the music goes silent. So you have the, like, all the music just goes silent. And then you just hear the ball coming down, the ball of, like, lightning, and then just the entire screen goes, right? With a massive sound effect. I basically just reversed that, and I did an LFO tool to it. So without it, it sounds like this. See that? And it just... I did that, and then I sampled some airplanes. There it is. And I sampled this piano. I sampled that and I reversed it and I distorted it at the end. See that? And then we finally get to the climax, which is basically just the same theme as drop 1, but it just has more layers in it. So let's go through them. We've already looked at the drums, and then we have the Bram acts as the sub. So, like, I didn't even care at this point. I was just like, this already has the sub. That's all we need. And if we got to, like, high passing this and then layering a sine wave below this layer, it would probably phase and, like, run into some issues. The sine wave mixed with this and the EQ I would have to do to high pass it would probably introduce a lot of phase shift, and so it would probably sound worse than just having the fundamental from the Bram kept in there. Layered with the drone swell. Layered with... This is a screech that you get from distorting 2 sine waves together. And when you just get one sine wave as a bass and then another as a high tone, and then you distort the crap out of it. Go for that, and then make that, and then we do a destructor, and we saturate the living shit out of this. See that? See what's going on there? That's basically what I was doing there. And this means we can have it do any note we want. That sounds like a cool screech, right? Like the most, like, 2011 screech you will ever hear. And all you needed was 2 sine waves. I just did that and I bounced it and I reversed it. And there we go. The gong scrapes, and then we have some supersaws. They're not even filtered, they're just, like, volume automated. And we have the sound from the first drop combined with some reeses that are finally, like, opening up to their full range. See that? And then we have the entire contact, like, wall of sound. So there's piano, brass, choir, strings, and winds in here. There's winds, there's the choir. See that? Male choir, winds, and the brass there in the background. I keep hearing the Avengers theme in my head when you play those two notes. Oh man. That's a vital growl. I'm pretty sure this is from Superliminal. Yeah, it is. I used the sound from Superliminal here. If you remember, like 3 years ago, I released Superliminal, and there were a bunch of new sounds, and this was one of them. It's called Specular Sustain, or that's what I called it anyway. And I just reused it here. Got some arps in here. We finally go up. Yeah. And there we go. And then we have that lead in there. The bass and the super sauce. They're just right. They don't even have that much effects going on. And then they go an octave higher for that last phrase. And then we have these arps again from the first stop. But instead of squares, now that's a square, and now we have stars. With delay, so they kind of like hang in there for a little longer. And the bells. And that brass just goes even higher, which is just the epicest thing. I know that's not a word, but we'll invent it. It's just the epicest. And the choir finally going to that top octave. And there it is. And we're just repeating that, but in a way that doesn't leak too much into the top register, because that's where the vocals will be. So we still have to have the foresight to compose around the vocal that we'll get in there later. And so here I finally start to get some like growl layers in. We have that. And this is a sound effect from NYP9. I think it's from like Boom Library. And Growlzilla, the Majol Twist, and a bass gem of mine. We got so cool. That's on the bass jam. These two, and then the reeds from like Death Stranding. Some more Growlzilla. And that's pretty much more of the same. And then at the end we have this rees going up so many octaves. Which this has a couple octaves, I think. So what this is now is what this is a rees with an octaver in it, and the octaver is just a pitch shifter that's on a patcher, so it has a direct out, and then there's a pitch shifter going on in parallel that is then high passed to prevent it from like making the bass too cluttered, right? So without this octaver patcher, it sounds like this. And then and there it is. And we did that. Which, if that's not the most cinematic thing in the world, I don't know what is. And that's it. And that's the end of the production project. I will now unload this project and head over to the mixing and mastering part, which is where the vocals are as well. So we'll start to hear a little bit of Evelyn in here. Anyway, here we have the mix and master project. Not only that, but here's Evelyn's vocals. Let's first go through Evelyn's vocals, okay? And then we'll get to the final bit, which is like all the mixing and mastering, which is pretty straightforward because there's not a whole lot going on. There were already a lot of choices made in the production project, so this is just about like fine tuning, like getting it just right, like just there, you know. Am I still myself? So if I were to turn off all of the effects that I have going on here, it would take me a while because there's like 20 effects in series. But no matter, I'll just turn them all off and show you what the raw vocal sounds like. Am I still myself? See that? Am I still myself? And there's still a bit of reverb in there because I still have the sends active. But basically what I did is, first of all, I gated the vocals to get the mic, the noise floor of the microphone out. So I did that, and then I have a spectral DS that's also going to reshape the sibilances. So there's a certain feature of her sibilances at around 6.3K that made it sound a little bit too sharp. So what I did was I reshaped that, and I kind of like spread out the sibilances a little bit more with this plugin, which is like, I gotta say, this is black magic right here, RxDS. And it's going to detect sibilances, and it's going to reshape those onto a softer tone. And then we get an EQ to basically low pass all the frequencies that are not used on her voice. And then we have a compressor. It's just going to take care of the absolute. So here's the threshold. And as you can see, it's not acting very often. It's just on the parts where it goes really loud, like here. Promise you'll remember me. See that? In this life and the next. And as you can see, it's not even that much. It's like -1, -2 at any given time at max. That's because I would much rather have 3 compressors that are compressing 2 dBs each than one doing -6 of gain reduction all at once. Promise you'll remember me. And there's a bunch of makeup gain that really starts to add that punch back into the vocals. Then we saturate a tiny bit with Saturn, which is hidden under there. There you go, boy. Saturn 2. Promise you'll remember me. Gonna drive up the vocal a little bit. We have another soothe to deal with the sibilances. And the sharpest, like, hisses in there. See that? It's the quietest thing. You're gonna need headphones for this because you're not gonna hear it on like a phone. Promise you'll remember me. I don't know how you can hear that. Me neither. And then we have another air EQ to debloat some things. Promise. And then a low pass again because the saturation has reintroduced some of the like rubbish on the bottom end. And then we have a Pro R. Promise you'll remember. At the tiniest bit, 4%. In this life and the next. And then just wait, there's more. There's a very slight OTT, 14%, no upwards.
Promise you'll remember me.
Another delay.
Promise you'll remember.
This one's not on ascend, this is an insert delay.
In this life and the next.
And this is just very, very quiet and very, very short. So it's kind of like very short, like detuner.
Promise you'll
So
promise you'll
that's the wet.
in this life and the next.
It's kind of like a doubler in a way.
Promise you'll remember.
See that? It kind of works like a doubler, which is very, very subtle. And then another one.
Promise you'll
This one's even quieter, but this one's basically like a proper delay. There it is. We have a lux verb now,
promise
minus 20 dB, so it's like the distant bits, but
in this
the distant kind of reverb, but just very, very subtle. And then I did some more EQ, and I must have seen something here.
promise you'll remember me.
See that? I had to cut that out. And then we have a Golfos to kind of like, let's say, add some uniformity to everything, like compensate a little bit. Global automatic EQ.
In this life and the next.
And then we have a tape simulation with ozone.
Promise
Make it sound a little bit more warm and analog-like. And then finally a de-esser.
promise you'll remember me.
Another de-esser.
Promise you'll remember me.
Because we have compressed so much and we have run it through so many compression modules, there's a lot of those sibilances have been brought back even further, right?
And promise you'll still love me.
And that's just the effects, but there's a ton of editing involved, like resyncing up the vocals on the places where it needs, getting the volumes of the double layers and the harmonies and the octaves just right. So there's this.
Promise you'll remember me.
And because I don't need two sibilances at once, I just need to cut the doubles up so they only have the vocals. Because I already have all the consonants in the lead vocal.
Promise you'll remember me.
And then we have an octave that I made with the double.
Promise you'll remember me.
And an octave that she provided.
Promise you'll remember me.
So it's a double octave. And then if we get the harmonies in the mix,
Promise you'll
we just solo that.
promise you'll remember me.
I harp hand these.
This life and the next.
And then I think I did this one myself with new tone. So I took this one and then I repitched it with new tone to get this secondary harmonic. And so with all the vocals and all the effects chains,
Remember me in this life and the next until the end.
and there it is.
And promise you'll still love me even after I rebel. How can you go to heaven when you haven't been through hell?
So she provided these spoken takes,
How can you go to heaven when you haven't been through hell?
and then an octave version of it,
When you haven't been through hell.
which I basically did with Stretch Pro.
When you haven't been through hell. When you haven't been through hell.
And I did some like radio effect on this, so I bandpassed and then I distorted.
How can you go to heaven? How can you go to heaven when you haven't been through hell?
And that's all the automations.
And nobody bringing me down.
And then on the yes, because there's more to this. So that the effects chain that I showed was for each of the like lead vocals and like all things like on their individual mixer track level. But then I send them all to the vocal master bus, And this is where I have some final things like an SPL twin tube. This is a saturator. Another like just final like broad strokes EQ and an air EQ for some air boost, and then a soft clip, and then a mouth declick. So just in case we have things like those. Those kinds of things.
No bringing me down.
All right, and this is also where the reverb sends happen. So I have three sends. One of them is a Pro R, like basically a blur reverb, very very short and full wet. Well, all sends are full wet. Then I have a timeless 3 delay, and then I have a Toro verb. And this means I can adjust the volume of these three sends independently. So I can control how much reverb, delay, or blur I want on each part of the song.
No bringing me down. Am I still the same?
And there it is.
And am I still the one?
So what I did here is I sampled her vocals here and I low passed it and I distorted it. I basically ran her vocals through the same chain as the top lead in the production project. And I got that out of this.
And am I still the one?
You can kind of hear the vocals through, and the same thing goes here. I think it's here. Yes.
Am I still the one?
That pretty fun.
The one who will prevail in this twisted fairy tale.
There's an additional high octave there, which I thought was impressive. And then there's some choirs in the second build-up. And then here.
I long to reconnect.
And there it is. And the final bit.
And nobody bringing me down, 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 down. They're bringing me down, down.
And all in all, this took about 14 hours to put together with the mix and the master. So yeah, I spent about 14 hours in this project, in the vocal edit and the mix master.
How can you go to heaven?
It's not that much.
Haven't been through hell.
If I think about it. And that's that. And let's just take a very quick look at the drum mixing and the instrument mixing. So basically all I have is just, I exported this in group stems as I tend to do always. The only exception to this was with NYP9 where I actually did export just individual stems for everything. And there's these hats which have a bit of a mid-high dip. And then there's a crash which has no processing, but it does have a minus 0.8 dB dip. And then there's a percussion channel where I debloated the bass and the mids a little bit. So this is probably to make it less boomy and less nasally. Or those would be the terms for that. And then I basically exported the sub only, and then all of the instruments without the sub, or like without an individual like sub, like a separate sub. That would be the word. So if I have that, let's mute the drums. And the instruments are going through a series of effects. We have a Pro MB to basically stabilize the bass, so whenever it goes too loud, or whenever there's a sudden jump in volume on the bass, I just have it here at the ready. See how it just acted there the tiniest bit? It'll probably be used somewhere here. That. And then a soft clip to basically do some peak cutting. And then glue, which is gonna be very subtle and only act on the loudest parts, like this probably. That'll probably get the glue up and running. See that? Basically just to catch some rogue peaks that might have been left over by the soft clipper. And then we have a compressor on just a -4 dB threshold. But I believe this one is a lot more lenient. Yeah, it has a 200 millisecond release. So so this one is this one acts a little bit less aggressively on the whole thing. And then we have the sub. So this is just for instruments that are like very bass heavy, you know? Go here. There it is. And the sub is actually going through the exact same chain. It's just stabilizing the bass and the soft clipper and the glue and the Pro C. So these two stems are going through the same chain. And then all of this is going through an air EQ, which just has the tiniest possible mid-end dip. It's just -0.3 dB. Look at that. And then I have this. It's called Soothe Carve Out. And what this is my usual technique of sidechaining the vocal signal onto Soothe to carve out its frequencies out of the instrumental. So I can basically make room for the vocals. So if I turn this on, look at this. We'll see, anytime the vocals play, the Soothe acts. And if I turn on the delta, you will actually be able to hear the vocals being carved out of the instrumental. Promise you will remember me. See how you can almost hear the instrumental coming through the vocal content? It actually makes for some pretty sick harmonics, not gonna lie. But that's not what I need. I need the vocal content to be carved out of the instrumental so I can make some additional space for the vocal. And then finally we arrive at the master chain, which is just one last air EQ to get out some of those pockets of mud out. And then the general multiband compressor, which is going to stabilize the sub and basically every other band to the levels that I saw fit. So as you can see, when the bass goes just a little bit too loud, and that CPU is just going to town. Then we have the mids, with the tiniest bit, and this will probably come in here. Just acts the tiniest bit, not even 1 dB in some cases. But this just helps increase the headroom so I can push it just that little bit higher on the maximizer later and get the maximal loves possible. Or at least the maximum loudness possible without ruining the track. So this just goes towards me being able to master it a tiny bit louder without absolutely ruining everything, or like making it like saturate or clip. And there we go. You can see the kick has a big jump in here in the mid-highs, which also helps stabilize that. And finally, we have a G3 limiter, which is my limiter of choice. It's brilliant. It's the best. It's the only limiter I ever want to use for the rest of my life. It's on 3 times oversampling, which is probably what's peaking my CPU so high when the vocals play. I should probably turn this down for the breakdown, but this can take it. And then finally, for true peak purposes, there's a ProWell on minus 0.1 dB true peak. So this isn't actually doing any gain maximizing. It's just cutting to make sure that on the analog domain, they're not saturated. Now, this limiter does have a true peak feature. It's just that I don't really like how it works, and I don't really like how it sounds. It leaves a little bit more rogue peaks out there, so like it seems not to be working all like as well or as precisely as ProWell does. But yeah, and guys, that being said, I believe we are done breaking down Reconnect. For a 3-minute song, we sure had a lot to talk about, huh? That was good. Thank you so much for watching this breakdown through until the very end. Those of you who haven't been able to watch it live will be able to see it on YouTube. So say hi to YouTube, Twitch chat. Will be going up sometime next week. So right now it's Saturday, March 2nd. So sometime next week we'll see this breakdown on YouTube. I mean, usually times 4 or 8 is already enough for the audio files I get. Yeah. Or for offline use. Anyway, so for the YouTube lads out there, this is the end of the video. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you some other time with more modus breakdowns.